afternoon, everyone, or good morning or good evening, depending on where you're calling in from. Welcome to what we think will be an enlightening discussion called Building a Career in Sustainable Resources Development. Before I just give an introduction to the session, I would be really happy to introduce our panel today. And to do that, you can see them on your screen, but I'm also going to share who we were back then. So I hope you can all see this. So I'd first like to introduce Geni Peters. She is the Director of Research at Eco Canada. That's a not-for-profit organization with a mission to ensure that Canada has the environmental workforce that we need. Geni is responsible for the management, execution, and delivery of environmental labor market information and national occupational standards projects. And Geni, this is a photo of you graduating, I think, high school. Great. Do you want to unmute yourself? I'd love to hear, and I think everyone would love to hear, when you were in high school, what did you think you were going to become?
Oh, gosh. So I was a little bit all over the place. At one point, I wanted to be an actor. At another point, I wanted to be a lawyer. Then I was going to be a business person. And it wasn't until I got into college that I sort of fell into the economics that I ended up studying for many years.
Fantastic. Thank you. We're looking forward to hearing how your career evolved. And Lisa, this is Lisa Stephenson. Lisa is a senior leader with Careers in Energy, a division of Energy Safety Canada. It is the Safety Association for Canada's upstream oil and gas. Lisa provides leadership and strategic oversight in all aspects of management and operation for the Careers in Energy division. So Lisa, this is a photo of you at your high school graduation as well. And can we also know, when you were in high school, what were you planning or thinking of becoming in your career?
Well, I had to laugh because, Geni, I thought I was going to be an actress too. I actually was invited to join the first inaugural theater studies program at Red Deer College. And so that was my diploma, was in theater studies performance. But then after that, I thought, well, no, nursing is where I want to be. And then actually I left post-secondary. I worked for several years and I didn't go back to get my degree or my master's until I was, well into my 30s. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Well, nice to have you here.
Yeah.
And next we have Will. Will Meyer is the Director of Marketing and Communications at the Mining Industry Human Resources Council, what we in the industry affectionately call MiHR. William is responsible for planning and providing strategic direction and effectively promoting and building awareness of MiHR and its programs, projects, and services. And Will, your graduation plans were?
There were none. I had no idea what I wanted to become, what I wanted to do. All I knew was I was going to go to university after high school, and I literally went through the book of all the programs until something spoke to me. And, I'd say that it's worked out fairly well. And so I guess my message is that it's okay not to know what you want to become when graduating high school. And, it's all part of the journey and you learn along the way.
Fantastic. Thank you. We have Lisa next, Krista Maydew, Director of Community Relations at IamGold Corporation, and that is a mid-tier gold producer and with operating mines in Burkina Faso and Canada. Krista works within multidisciplinary teams in the areas of socioeconomic impact assessment, labor force development, Indigenous peoples engagement, and public participation. Krista.
So I think, like everyone else so far, I really wasn't clear on my career goals when I was in high school. I sort of jumped around from a range of potential occupational aspirations from pathologist to psychologist. And when I started off at university, I actually thought I would study history and English literature, and ended up doing my undergrad in philosophy, discovering a passion for the study of knowledge.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Thank you. And Tony. So this is Tony Knutson at your graduation formal.
Correct. Yep.
You are the emissions research lead, metals and mining at Wood Mackenzie. You are responsible for mining and metals emissions and benchmarking capabilities and turning them into a world-class resource for clients and to assess profiles, carbon policy risk, and benchmark assets and companies across the major metals and bulks commodities. Those are mouthfuls. I hope I got it.
You did. You know, that's not what I had on my what I wanted to be when I grew up list, but it's definitely treated me very well. And I have to go back to when I was little. I wanted to be a paleontologist, but I also liked being around equipment, which maybe was a foreshadow where I ended up. But in grade 12 in 1995, I'm going to date myself. I don't care. I wanted to be a doctor, and I don't like blood. So the only doctor I was thinking I could be was an optometrist. So, and we'll get into that story later.
Awesome. Looking forward to it. Thank you. So, and myself, I should tell you a little bit about me. This is me in my high school graduation, 1992. I'm the founder and CEO of SOOP Strategies, and we are a specialty consulting firm working with organizations in the mining and metal sector on their sustainability, strategic planning, and reporting. I was very focused in high school. I knew I wanted to be a surgeon, and I was planning for medical school, and I was planning for the engineering undergrad to get me into medical school, so that would help with my surgical skills. And then life happened, and now I'm not. And I don't regret it, but I have to say the mining sector has been a wild ride and continues to be. So thank you everyone for their vulnerability in sharing their high school photos. I hope that the viewers and the audiences feel comfortable enough to ask us more questions about our meandering pathways. Before we get into the questions, I just want to let the viewers know that they can put questions into the Q&A section, and I will monitor it, and then we'll pass them over to whoever on the panel you would like to put that question to. So before we start, I just want to say that I think we're not going to just be talking about career. Oh God. But I'm sorry, my dog is
That's life getting in the way. That's normal.
There's life getting in my way. my son just got home from school, and my dog is very excited. So let's just begin. Forget my introduction. I would love to ask all of the panelists, and let's start with you, Krista. You've got the biggest smile right now. Could you share your educational background and how it prepared you for what you do today with IamGold?
Sure. So I think I've probably got one of the least conventional educational backgrounds that I've encountered in mining so far. So as I said in my introduction, I studied philosophy. When I went to university, I studied it because it was something that was of great interest and passion for me. I didn't really study it for the intent of wanting to apply it in any particular discipline. I guess the benefit I would say of sort of having that more broad undergraduate degree gave me an opportunity to really examine ethics and study a range of ethics from environmental ethics to bioethics, and really sort of looking at things from a multi-stakeholder perspective and an ethical decision-making perspective. So the work I do in the mining industry right now, working in community relations and stakeholder engagement, I'm constantly looking at issues from all perspectives and from that multi-stakeholder approach. So unbeknownst to me, that degree is actually proven very useful. It's also proven very useful from just a general critical thinking and writing perspective. A lot of what I do involves communicating materials to community members and making sure that that what's written is in a non-technical manner, so that everyone can understand it regardless of their technical background or non-technical background. So I would say those are the sort of the key aspects of my undergraduate degree that really helped me. And then I've done some postgraduate work and graduate studies as well that have also proven useful. Oh, I think you're on mute, Sabrina.
There we go. Thank you. I was going to ask Lisa to talk about your career in the energy sector and how your education helps you navigate that career.
Sure. Yeah. Like as I said, I didn't, I finished right after high school. I did my diploma in theater studies, and then life happened. I got married, had babies, moved to Calgary. Didn't know really what I was going to do, but ended up working for a childcare day home agency and nanny agency for several years, and then eventually opened up my own business for 3 years, and just kind of fell into the energy sector. But I really got on with the organization and fell in love with safety. So I'm actually a Canadian registered safety professional. So that organization was great. I got to understand how the energy, the different departments of the organization, the different types of work, from servicing to drilling to operations to pipelines, marketing, all of those facets of an energy company. And they supported me to get my health and safety certificate. And then at some point in my life, I thought, you know what, I really want to get a degree. And I was pleasantly surprised, and this is the advice I would give to someone. I was pleasantly surprised that my credits from Red Deer College applied to my degree, even though it was, several decades later. I still got credit for those sociology courses and the English courses. So, it really wasn't that far off for me to get my degree. And then as I was finishing my school, I ended up getting some promotions through my organization. I went to another, I worked for an oil producer. Then I went to a service provider to understand, what it is to work in Fort McMurray, what it is to stay in camp and to work on those sites. And then I got into Energy Safety Canada, which is the Health and Safety Association, and was promoted into a leadership role, and really decided, I had my degree in safety, I had my designation in safety, but I really wanted to learn more about business. So then that organization supported me to get my MBA. So it really brought together kind of all of my knowledge about the energy industry, the different activities, but then also gave me some leadership and business acumen to kind of round out my career.
Fantastic. Thank you. Will, how about yourself?
Well, for me, like I said, I didn't know what I wanted to become when I finished high school, and I ended up going in university. I took mass communications with a minor in law, just based on the programs, what my interests were at the time. And then when I finished that, I still didn't know what I wanted to become. And I decided to take public relations in college after university. And that kind of helped round out my practical education. And it's where I guess I really honed my skill and really learned that, writing was one of the things that I was most interested in doing. I've always enjoyed writing, whether it's creative writing or just writing in general. So that helped me out a lot there. And then I went into my career. I've worked in government. I've worked in several industry associations, whether it be with engineers or biofuels, and all of that kind of culminated into being at the right place at the right time, and then joining MiHR as the director of marketing and communications. In that, I didn't have that mining experience, but in communications, we wear a lot of different hats. Essentially, my role is to support the organization and what it does, and then, by proxy, support the industry itself and its workforce. So having that kind of well-rounded communications background experience, as well as, growth in my career, really helped for me in my current role, wearing a lot of different hats, whether it be, it's not, I'm in the mining industry, and it's not what somebody would consider working in traditional mining. And that's one of the things we want to get across as well in the organization, is that there's so many facets of mining that, it's not necessarily always just underground, above ground work. There's a whole bunch of different areas that you can work in mining. And, I work on many different things around, whether it's writing, events, graphic design, high level strategy, et cetera. So I'd say all that, kind of that education and then the experience along the way in a career has really helped me out.
Amazing. Thank you. Geni, how about you with your education, and how do you use it in your role today?
Well, I guess we'll start by saying that I was afraid to get out of school, so I kept going and going and going until I finally got a PhD, and they tried to kick me out, but then I decided, no, I'll teach. So I ended up working as a university lecturer for 14 years. I think that experience taught me a lot about communication and relationship building, particularly public speaking and developing materials that took relatively complex ideas and broke them down into their component parts so that I could provide that information to my students. It also gave me a great insight into the research process and what's involved in the development of an idea, and then formulating a scope of study and looking at what types of variables you want to consider, what types of sources of information, and then pulling that all together and putting it into a narrative that makes sense to an end user who knows nothing about the subject matter whatsoever. So I think those two components have really played an important role in the job that I have now, which is basically researching the environmental workforce to try to determine what sorts of people we need as environmental workers, regardless of what sector they're in, and what types of gaps there might be. So what types of openings there are for workers, and then disseminating that information to a variety of audiences, the government, educational institutions, job seekers, students, and so forth. So I'm really glad that I got an opportunity to move past the university eventually and move into a role where I could more practically use my skills.
Thank you. And Tony,
Great.
how about you?
I took a very odd path. As I mentioned, I wanted to be an optometrist, so I did a biology degree, and I was not asked to come back after a year. So, that's just a lesson in failure and self-inflicted. However, I've dusted myself off and went to a kind of a local technical college, the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology. And, I like rocks. I got a bunch of rocks right behind me. I got my rock hammer, and I did a diploma in geology. And then I decided to go back to university at 36. I did my geology degree, and while I was working 30 hours a week. And then I decided during that time, I was inspired to go back into a master's. I went to Queen's University and did a master's in earth and energy resource leadership, because it's something I wanted to, have something bigger than myself as part of the mining industry. As I recognized as I've grown, it became less than a job and more of how I'm influencing the industry as it became more senior, and something I'm very proud of, and something we'll talk a bit more. But don't be afraid to go back, or don't worry about failure.
I think that's such a strong message, and from the entire panel, I think one of the messages is education at any time and redefining the path. Before we get into a little bit more about careers and how, what we've done within our careers within the resources sector, I want to touch on ethics. And I think, Krista, you mentioned ethics. We face this, at least from the mining sector, but from from a resources sector, the ethics of, should we be pulling things out of the ground, and how do we do that ethically, and so the sustainable development aspect of it. And I know a lot of the younger generation that's coming up rightfully so, would like to have a purpose in what their work is, a purpose in the organization, or that the organization has a purpose that aligns with their values. So I'd like to ask how you reconcile that. I guess, how have your personal beliefs and your values aligned with working in a resource extraction sector, especially within this context of sustainable development and environmental responsibility? And let's start with you, Krista.
Thanks, Sabrina. Yeah, so it's an interesting question, because one of the things that that really sort of fueled my own career path was just never wanting to have a day at the office, whatever that office might look like, doing the same thing over and over again. I didn't want anything repetitive as my lifelong career. And I would say that one of the things that sort of really fuels me in this area is that every day is different. And from an ethics perspective, in a values perspective, the work that I get to do in my current role, to me, is so fulfilling, because for years I worked as a consultant prior to coming directly to work for the mining industry. And I worked for a lot of mining clients, and I had, even my own children over time have asked me the question of, okay, well, how do you reconcile what you do and the impact on communities? And I always felt like, for me, my role was really to facilitate and help communities have voices in the process. So whether or not it's an environmental assessment process or a construction project or an operations, it's really helping to elevate the voices of communities so they have some input into the projects as well. And really helping now within the mining industry, working directly within our company and our own projects to help communities realize the benefits, because oftentimes, in the extractive sector, we make promises to communities, we make commitments, and sometimes making those commitments is a lot easier than acting on those commitments. So the work I get to do is really sort of facilitating and working alongside communities in more of a collaborative way to make sure that those communities are realizing those benefits, and we're really holding ourselves to account for the commitments we've made, and to mine in a responsible way from that perspective.
Thank you. Does anybody want to respond or add to that? I was going to pick on someone. Oh, there you go, Tony.
I'll go. Yeah, that's really important. That's one aspect of my job that I was involved in a previous role, was working with Indigenous communities and doing consultation. And it really, and I was developing a coal mine. So talk about being, challenged there. So the way I did it was a brand new greenfield coal mine, and I wanted people to hear our voices, and I wanted their involvement to be in this project, and I took it to heart. That's really important to me as a person in the mining industry. We have to move past this. There's almost a caricature of the mining industry that's out there, and I think we're changing it, but it's important for people's voices to be heard, really heard, and then incorporated. And we incorporated a lot of their concerns into our planning, be it, I'll use an example like paving our roads or covering everything, or, we actually moved our site because there was a mineral salt lick used for animals. So it felt really good to be involved in that, and I was going to bring it here, but it's probably going to show up, and I've got 2 eagle feathers sitting on my wall that I received from elders and local community members as part of my work. That's just super rewarding, and it's just it reflected on my desire to make sure this mining project, which was intruding on their traditional lands, that their voices were heard.
Maybe, I was just going to go to you, Will.
Yeah, sure. I was going to add on that I like that character analogy, and that I think it is really important to move past that character analogy. And, there's this view, there's negative perceptions around the mining industry. And I think you said, Sabrina, youth have this view or not wanting to go into the industry. We've done polling, we've seen people's thoughts on that, but it's exposure to what the industry is actually doing and spreading that message that I think is really important in terms of communicating what it's doing. So for example, one of our programs called Gearing Up. It's a wage subsidy program for employers who create placements for post-secondary students. And we've done case studies on students. And one that always stuck out in my mind is we had a meeting and we invited some people that were involved in the program to come and share their stories. And so one post-secondary student stood up and she started talking about how she was never ever going to work in mining. She's, doing environmental sciences and I'm never working in mining. It's terrible. And then this opportunity came around and she took the placement. And, after being in that placement, she said she now wants to work in mining. She sees all the wonderful things they're doing environment-wise, and she wants to help. And it's interesting too, like I was saying, exposure to it and knowledge of, because minerals and metals, they're critical. They're critical minerals and metals, but they're critical to, if we want to transition to a green economy, where are we going to get the minerals and metals to build all the batteries and everything else, all the infrastructure that's required to do that. So it's kind of a catch-22 in that, we want to be moving forward in a green transition, yet have this caricature of the mining industry. So we need to spread that exposure about what the industry is actually doing. And I think that's going to go a long way.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Lisa.
If I could just jump in, I want to echo actually both of those points. It's I think it's providing that education and awareness of what the companies actually do, how they perform their operations. They are doing so with with respect to the environment and social, they are doing so with best practices. And I think for us at Careers in Energy, what we want to do is really provide that education and awareness of the different roles that are available. It's not just working on a rig. There's lots of places where you can be more of an active participant. I think having your voice and guiding and having that conversation, I think, is really important.
Thank you. Geni, do you have any perspective coming from the human resources of EcoCanada, looking at the jobs that we need to fill?
Absolutely. Yes. I have to admit that when I joined EcoCanada 4 years ago, I was unaware of the landscape of environmental work in Canada. And it's been a real eye-opener to me, and I like to pass that along to others. There are so many different opportunities for individuals who want to make a contribution to the solutions rather than complaining about the problems. And those opportunities are, as Will said, some of them are in marketing and communications, some of them are in administration, some of them are in truck driving, some of them are in the trades, some of them are in civil or heavy engineering. They're all over the place. And one of the things that is most exciting to us is that not only are jobs in the environmental sector green jobs, but more and more jobs throughout the economy are becoming greener. And in many ways, even in, or especially in resource extraction industries where we have such heavy regulation and so many compliance requirements for the organizations involved in extraction, we have some extremely talented and intelligent and creative individuals who are working towards solutions to the concerns that people have about extraction impacts. And so I'm just awed by the wonderful contributions that people are making, the innovations that are being developed over time. And I'm very optimistic about the future of resource extraction in Canada, because we do take the best practices approach that many other regions don't. And so we are, I think, leading the world when it comes to those sorts of efforts. And I like to see that continue.
Me too. Yeah, that's very well said. One of you mentioned the student who did an internship, that did an internship and then realized mining is for her. Do any of you have any of those aha moments where we all kind of fell into mining in some meandering way, not so direct, but I mean, like, I know my aha moment where this is this industry for me. Do you guys have an aha moment of yep, this is it. This is my interest and my passion, or maybe not passion, might be too strong. Career path.
I'll go real quick. To me, it was, it was part of something bigger. It was part of this wider industry. When I first started my career, I was working at a mine, and we were mining coal, and we were providing, making power for all of Alberta. It was really interesting to that fact, and we were working together, and I like working on teams, and I love big equipment, so that was an advantage too. So that, for me, that's what it was.
Will, you're going to add?
Sure. Yeah. For me, I was born and raised in Ottawa, in the city. Mining was never a thing. It wasn't in our backyard. It isn't discussed at schools, which is actually interesting because about a year ago, my kids came home in elementary school, and they had a little thing had to do with mining. And I said, oh, they're starting to talk about mining in schools here in the public system. That's fantastic. But so I didn't grow up with mining whatsoever. And as I said, I went into, after my education, kind of industry associations, and there's engineering background and fuels background, et cetera. When I got a little bit older, I got married. My wife is from Northern Ontario, so I got exposed to the mining industry that way, because large family, and so many of her family are, lifetime miners in the mining industry. So I had that. So full disclosure, for me, it really was, I saw the job posting at MiHR, and I just kind of went, aha, this is a fit. It's the communications kind of role that suits me. And I looked through the information, and, Mining Association of Canada and other information, NRCan, and I said, yeah, this is very interesting work. I'm going to apply to this position. And then, the rest is history. So it was more of an aha moment, just seeing the right type of role within an organization, and the subject matter was interesting as well.
You knew it when you saw it.
Yeah.
Sounds like kismet. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Lisa, Krista, Geni.
I'll just quickly say, I didn't realize I was so passionate about safety until I started working at an organization, and it was actually the Health and Safety Association. So just being able to, help companies improve their health and safety performance, making sure that their workers got home at the end of the day. I guess my aha moment was get a job sooner in the energy sector. I wished I would have known about, the Careers and Energies, the Eco Canadas, the HR, Will, your organization. I think those associations provide so much information on the career path, the jobs that are available. And I wished I would have known that when I was 18, not when I was, 36.
Yeah, awesome. Krista, were you going to add?
Sure. Yeah, I'll jump in. So I think one of the aha moments for me over my career was not having a defined career path, which ended up leading me to mining, but it did so because I just kind of kept my eyes open for possibilities. And I had, of course, not having a very clear career path myself. One of the first jobs I found myself doing after moving to Yellowknife was working as a school to work transition coordinator in a high school. So who better to counsel people than somebody who doesn't know what they want to do when they grow up? And so it was in the early 2000s, I'll date myself here too. And Diavik and BHP had just opened up in like the fall of 1998, 1999. And so working in a high school, I got to see how the mining companies were really trying to reach into the schools to engage youth, because I would get calls from the mining companies asking if they could come in and do in-school presentations. And of course, as the person responsible for school to work transitions, I sat in on all of those sessions, and I thought, wow, well, these careers sound really interesting. And anytime I had anyone in talking about careers to the students, I was always listening for, maybe that's where I need to go next, because I still wasn't sure about what I wanted to do. But I had the great fortune of accompanying a group of students actually to one of the fly-in mines. So the company had arranged a charter flight for about 12 of us to go up to the site and spend the day at site, see the equipment working, walk through the processing plant, see what kind of recreational facilities exist and accommodations, and eat in the cafeteria, and I was kind of sold. I thought this is a great place to out in the middle of the tundra. It was quite spectacular. So I was enchanted by all of the possibilities that mining offered quite early on.
I felt the same way when living at mine sites. It's like, it's a lot of work, but it's camp for adults. You have a gym on site, there's cafeteria, the things get made, the laundry's done, you come, and then there's the camaraderie, right? The group of people that you're working with day in and day out. It doesn't happen in an office setting or a virtual setting. And I kind of miss my fly in, fly out days too. One of my questions was, does anyone want to talk about one of their most rewarding projects that you've worked on within your career? No takers?
I guess I could go. Yeah, yes. I guess I could go because kind of goes on to what Krista was saying, sorry, in that getting individuals into the high schools to speak to the students. So one of the projects that I spearheaded, I've worked on, is the We Need Mining, Mining Needs You career awareness campaign. So that one, with our polling, with all of the research we've done, all our labor market analysis, et cetera, public or post-secondary education analysis, we decided to move forward with a career awareness campaign to dispel those negative perceptions and to showcase to youth the importance of the industry and how they can personally benefit as well as benefit the industry and the country by going into mining. So that one was really rewarding in the sense that we created it from scratch. There's the miningneedsyou.ca website, there's career profiles, career book, interactive world of mining careers, where youth can see the different kinds of occupations and different work environments, like above ground, underground, laboratories, workshops, offices, and they can do a career quiz to see where they might fit in the industry. And there's a pathway to show them where they could move along in their career. And we have a scholarship program that a 5-year scholarship program that we had developed as part of our 25th anniversary. It's now in its 3rd year. The application deadline just passed, and we got the most number of applications we've received so far in the past 2 years. So this is the 3rd. So that was really rewarding to see. And then we have, as part of that program as well, career ambassador program, where we are getting industry representatives to sign up as ambassadors and go and speak to youth at schools, et cetera, and trying to get them into speaking to the youth to tell their stories, because it's really interesting. It's really important to see the people behind the work, the people behind the industry, and what they have done and accomplished. So that, to me, has been one of the most rewarding projects that I've worked on.
That sounds awesome and much needed. Yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, just along the same lines, I think of as that is, we have a great program where we have gone into the high schools. We've created a teacher toolkit, and we've gone in as early as grade 8 to high school to post-secondary. And we have created 8 virtual work sites of energy work sites. We've loaded those onto a VR headset so that the high school students can actually put on the VR headset and experience what it would like to, be up at SAGD, work in a mine or in a process plant. So, just the impact that we've had and the reaction we've had from the students, just to bring awareness to the work environment, the different careers, and just see how, the impact that those VR headsets have had, I think has been really great and rewarding.
That's fantastic. Tony, go ahead.
I'll go real quick. I guess mine relates to I led a team that we permitted, which is a long process. Basically, for everybody listening, is basically getting a bunch of information, studies, people together, and submitting an application to the government to say, hey, we want to mine this reserve. And we put this application, and at the end, we actually didn't have to go to a hearing. So, and this was for a coal mine, and what that meant was, it was really satisfying because we had done a really good job environmentally, socioeconomically, that the government and the people reviewing the project didn't feel we had to go to this extra next step, and it was very rewarding. And that included the Indigenous peoples we worked with as well, who lived right next to this proposed mine, which was extra satisfying. So that was yeah, I still got a picture up on my wall of it. So it's something I'm super proud of. So
Yeah,
we did it. We did it right. We did it right. So.
And permitting is one of the biggest challenges in the life
Mhm.
cycle. And
Yeah.
congratulations. How about challenges? Does anyone want to talk about any challenges that they have faced working in the resource sector and how you've overcome them?
I'll jump in and be vulnerable here. So I think probably one of the biggest challenges that I faced because I worked as a consultant for many years, and I had this very meandering path, and I came to work directly for a mining company just over 3 years ago. And one of the biggest challenges I faced was a hurdle that I think I put up myself. And it was feeling like I didn't belong because my background and my path to get here looked different than most of the people I've worked with. A lot of the folks I work with have very technical engineering backgrounds, mining technical backgrounds, environmental backgrounds, and I came from this arts and social science world, which there aren't very many of us in the mining sector. And so, to overcome that, I think I probably worked harder than I might have needed to, just to try and learn as much and absorb as much information I could about mining processes and the technical aspects of mining, and just trying to learn the business as much as possible so that at least I felt like I knew what was going on around me. And in doing that, I ultimately came to realize that the value in the skill set that I brought, and that as a bigger piece of the puzzle, I belong.
Yeah.
So I think that was sort of the biggest challenge I faced, is just kind of feeling a little bit like I'm an imposter here.
Yeah. What's interesting is what you say is making you feel like an imposter, I think is what's much needed in the mining sector, right? It's like your superpower, that you have this perspective and this education and background prior to entering the industry that takes a whole fresh new perspective. And a perspective that's more complex than, like the calculus of mining is very bounded, tied up in a nice bow. It's very technical, but there is the messier stuff. And that's usually the S part of the ESG, right? The nebulous, the always changing and complex area. So I'm hoping things are changing. Like, I'm hoping that we're bringing more and becoming more accepting of the non-technical. Because I know the resistance that you're talking about. I mean, I have an engineering background, but I also do the soft stuff. Or soft, I shouldn't say soft, but I know what you're saying. Does anyone else have a challenge they'd like to bring to the table?
Sure. Yeah, I'll just jump in. So one of the challenges that Eco Canada has, and for those of you who don't know, Eco Canada is based in Calgary, Alberta, Canada, which is the headquarters for the oil and gas industry in the country. We aim to represent solution finders, as opposed to those who would want to use more, or I guess less productive ways of handling some of the issues that the environment faces. And so one of the issues that we come up against is that there are such polarized views with regard to climate change and with regard to the impact of environmental degradation and the need for environmental policies and regulations, that it's a very fine line sometimes that we're walking, so we can accommodate the stakeholders from multiple backgrounds and multiple perspectives, and try to bridge those perspectives together rather than taking sides and arguing for one side or the other. So acting as a bridge or a facilitator is one of our challenges at Eco Canada, and one of the things that I feel is one of the more important aspects of the job as well.
Thank you. Tony?
I just want to jump in real quick. So one interesting challenge that I came across is when I first started in the industry. And I came into the mining industry and had a baby face and I'm young and I'm talking to power plant operators who've operated this 500 megawatt power plant for 20 years, or I'm talking to a mine supervisor who's been there for 20 years, and I'm giving them direction, or I'm, asking for advice. And, it's just, they look at you, I'm like, well, I got kids that are way older than you. What are you doing here? You don't know anything. So it's building up confidence in yourself. And it was, being persevering through it. And, even just getting to know the people, like I know we have an aging mining population, across the board, be it engineers, be it tradespeople, operators. So, it behoves you to, really, take the time to get to know people. They're just people, and they all have interesting stories. So that's how I break ice. So.
Yeah, thank you. In terms of breaking ice and the older generation, maybe we can talk a little bit about mentorship, which I think is really important. It was important in my career, and I know a lot of people have had formal or informal mentorship relationships. Was there a key individual who influenced individuals who influenced your career in mining, whether it helped open your eyes to a different aspect of the industry or energy sector as well for Lisa? And perhaps you can share a little bit about how you were guided by them. I'm going to pick on someone.
Don't make me jump in. I will. So, everybody else can go.
All right, go ahead, Will.
Oh, okay, sure. In terms of like a mentor for my career, I'd say the first thought I just had was my father, because his advice to me was just that he just wanted me to be happy in whatever work I did. Right? It didn't matter what it was I was doing, but as long as I was happy. He had a career, he was not always happy in his career, and wished he was doing something else, and he didn't want that for me. So that's kind of also my advice to the listeners as well, is as long as you're happy doing what you're doing, and you're making an impact as well. I mean, that's fantastic. So there's that. And in terms of the mining industry itself, there wouldn't be one individual, but I would say it's I think Tony was just saying, getting to know people. So in my line of work, we go to a fair number of industry conferences, and it is just talking to the people and talking about their experiences in mining. And when I first started working at the Mining Industry HR Council, starting a new job, and again, not knowing 100%, when you start a new job, don't know if it's 100%, to make the right decision, et cetera, et cetera. But the more I talk to people at these events about their experiences working in mining and what they do and what they were trying to do at the conference, that kind of guided me along in such a positive way to say, yeah, I made the right decision. Within the industry, there's so many good people, and they're doing a lot of great work. And there's some really great stories here that I'm getting to tell as a communications professional. So I would just say it's the getting to know different people within the industry and making those connections, and just kind of being guided by the great work that's being done by the industry.
Thank you. That's good advice. Does anyone else have advice that they would impart, and also a mentorship story? Thank you, Lisa.
I wouldn't say I've had a strong mentor. I really wished I had. I think if I was to give advice to anyone listening to this panel, it would be to seek a mentor or a coach, because it's not about just giving you the courage and advice on your career, but it's actually pointing out some of the things that you need to work on to develop, to really become self-reflective of yourself. And I think that's just so important. But I think it's also important for networking and identifying role models. I've had a lot of strong role models in my career. And I think that just as important as the mentorship and the networking and going out and just meeting people and learning their experience and putting yourself in their shoes, trying to look at it through a different perspective, not just through your perspective, but their perspective. And I think that I think that's the best advice I could give.
Thank you.
I'll jump in quickly, Sabrina, if I can. So I can't say that I've had any one mentor throughout my career, but I've had a multitude of really talented people I've worked with over the years. And I think the sort of relationships where I've gotten the most out of is working with others who have really sort of pushed me to question why I'm going down a certain path in terms of the work I'm doing, or why I'm thinking a certain way. Just challenging my thinking, not necessarily to encourage me to change my mind, but to really own and understand my own thinking. And I think, like the other stuff, there's one piece of advice I could offer to our listeners today. It's really sort of, it's great to have a career goal, but it's really important to focus on the journey of your career and not get too caught up trying to get to a specific destination, because you might lose sight of a whole host of opportunities that present themselves that you weren't even aware of that existed, and might take you down a different path, but one that could be ultimately incredibly rewarding too.
Absolutely. Someone said it earlier, being in the right place at the right time. And I think the third part of that is recognizing it, like recognizing what's in front of you. And it's a hard balance for those of us who have this specific career path and, are just gunning for that. It sometimes jolts you to end up looking outside of that path, and you end up in mining, but loving it. But yeah, I completely, what you're saying resonates. Any other last comments on advice for your younger self, Ethan? Is it actually, I'd love to ask, is there anything you would like to do, you would have done differently?
I can jump in here. I think the first thing that I would have done differently is I would have taken some time between my various programs to get some actual work experience outside of the university setting. These days, I see the value that so many young people can contribute to organizations, the innovation, the ideas that they've got, and they just need an opportunity to do that. I was locked into those books and the library, and I missed out on all of those opportunities. So getting work experience, whether it's through work integrated learning or a co-op program of other kinds, or just getting out there and volunteering, getting your feet in the door, getting some real tangible practical experience is I think what I missed out on, and I only got it very late in my career. So I was playing catch up in a lot of ways. So I guess that would be my advice to my younger self.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, Will.
Yeah, if I can just quickly jump in for a final piece of advice. What I would have done differently is I would have been more curious. Like when I was saying I didn't know what I wanted to be, I really would have thought more deeply about it and spent more time doing a lot more research on that. Mm-hmm. So also within my career, I have found being curious is so helpful. Starting in a new role, if you don't have experience, it's asking all those questions. In my role, I went right to my colleagues. What do you want from your communications team? What have they done in the past? What would you like to see done differently? And learning about the work that they do so I can help support them. So being curious. And then advice I'd give as a final piece of advice, be positive and resilient in that no matter what your desired career path is or your planned career path, there's bound to be bumps in the road. There's bound to be doors shut on you. There's bound to be people telling you no. And, I would just like to say I've learned every no brings you one no closer to that yes. Every door that shuts brings you closer to making a turn and then finding that right door that opens for you. So be positive, resilient, and always be curious is my final bit of advice.
Mm-hmm.
Just going to quickly add on to that. I would say, don't be afraid to take leaps. I don't think I'd ever be living in Washington, D.C. I grew up in a town of 800 people in Western Canada, in Alberta. And, I've had some really cool twists and turns in my career, and they were my network, hard work, and leaps.
Awesome.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly jump in. I think for my younger self, I'm pretty handy, even though being a woman, but I never thought about trades when I was in high school. I mean, I graduated way before you guys did. So, it wasn't a norm for girls to choose the trade. So don't discount the trades and don't overlook what you like, what you're naturally good at. trust yourself, and really, I agree with what everyone else is saying. Take chances, dream big, you can do it. The world's your oyster.
We need you.
We need you. We do, and we need that the younger generation with their diversity of thought and contribution. And I think resilience is really important, but I also think they have the guts, like like we're gonna do it. And whereas when I was in my 20s, I was far more, okay, I'll do that then. So I think, the mining and the resources sector really needs them. We're down to our last minute, I think. Is that right, Sagar? That's our facilitator. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our panelists for sharing your insights and your experiences today. Your photographs. I haven't shown my high school photograph in decades, so thank you for making it okay to do that and fun. And I hope that everybody who's joined us, if you've asked a question, it didn't show up on my monitor, but as one of the messages was, speak to people. Most of us are on LinkedIn. You can connect with us, please do. I'm always happy, and I know we're all happy to speak to you and to share more of our experiences, and even just be a sounding board for your curious questions. The one thing I could say about sustainable resource development is it's not just an industry or a field. It's an opportunity, and it's a responsibility, especially as we move forward. The opportunities are vast, and most of them haven't even been discussed here. But I think that we could really benefit from your education and from your dedication, your knowledge, and your initiative. So thank you, everybody. I think we end it now. That was fun.